Today is Monday, June 30th, 2025, and this is Spring Office Hours, Season 4, Episode 18, AI Show and Tell with Craig Walls. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom. As you can see, if you are here in the live stream, my good friend Deshaun is out again. So I decided to invite my other friend here, Craig Walls, onto the show, which, Craig, I think you have to be the most recurring guest we've ever had. So that's a pretty cool title to have.
Really?
Yeah, I would think so. I think this might be your third episode, maybe even fourth. I have to look. So
yeah, I've lost track then. Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I can't count.
If somebody missed one of those episodes, can you just go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you already said my name, Craig Walls. I am a developer on the Spring engineering team, primarily focused on some of the commercial aspects of Spring. And at the moment, I've been working with a team developing some of the commercial AI, Spring AI aspects, and that's some fun stuff and some challenging stuff, especially considering how quickly this space is moving and trying to keep up with it. That's been a huge challenge. But yeah, as you can see from behind me, I'm a big fan of Peanuts, but also most people know me as a fan of Disney stuff, so I got my Epcot hat on. But yeah. It's a good time to be a nerd. Let's just say that.
Yes, that's true. How many times? I don't even know this because our family's gone to Disney World in Florida. We've been there a few times. We love it. But I know you're a big fan of Disney World, Disneyland. There are so many parks all over the world. Have you gone to them all? What's your favorite?
Well, I've not gone to any of them outside the United States. So only the Disneyland Resort and the Disney World Resort. And but how many times, I have no idea. I've totally lost track. And
hundreds?
No, I wouldn't say it's hundreds, but definitely in the multiple teens.
Wow.
Was in Disney World for just a day or two. Actually, was it one day? Yeah, one day in the parks. I was there last month before getting on a Disney cruise.
Nice.
And then here in about 3 weeks, I'm going to Disneyland for a few days.
Awesome. Well, that should be fun. Disneyland is in California. Is that correct? And we went the first couple of times the kids were really young. We went to Disney World, and it just worked out because I had a speaking engagement in Orlando, so we were close. So we went to Disney World at the end of July, and it was 100 degrees outside. It was the most miserable thing ever, but we stuck it out.
Oh yeah, you don't do that in July. That's miserable. In fact, we just discussed a few days ago that we want to go back again to World, but we're not going again until it's January.
We went in January, right after Christmas this year, and it was beautiful. It was 70 degrees. It was 30 at home. So yeah, it was perfect. All right, cool. So we are here to talk about AI. Just a reminder, though, if you are in the live stream, please go ahead and let us know where you're joining us from. Please get your questions in. As my good friend Deshaun says, if you come to his house for dinner and you leave hungry, that's your fault. If you are here in the live chat and you have questions and you don't ask them, that's on you, not us, right? So make sure you get those questions in. And it can be about anything, Spring. Well, we don't know if we can answer them, but we'll certainly try. Especially in the world of Spring AI, we'll see if we can answer those questions. And then just a reminder, if you are not available or on the live stream with us, we go ahead and turn this into a podcast. You can get this wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also catch the video replay of this on the Spring Developer YouTube channel. So with that, we're going to have some fun today. We're going to kind of talk about a whole bunch of different topics. Craig and I have some things we just kind of want to show off. We just like nerding out over AI and Spring AI. So we're going to talk about some of those things today. I want to start off with, I don't know if you got a chance to see this, Craig, but I finally got the course that I've been working on forever launched last week. This is the I call it the AI for Java developers course. It's really an introduction into Spring AI, and it is almost 6 hours long. And I know you've produced videos before, and some of the videos you produce are in the 5 to 10 minute range. You know how long it is, how hard it is to produce a 10-minute video.
Right.
Creating a 6 hour video.
Far longer than 10 minutes.
Right. So this was a lot of work putting this together. And I said, in a tweet, and like when you create a video, it's not just like something you learned for like a day or a week, right? Like I think I've taken like everything I've learned over the last like 12 to 18 months and kind of shoved it into this. So it was a lot of fun putting this together. I just want to let everybody know, if you were waiting for this, this is out there, and I'll put this in the show notes. The other thing I wanted to talk about, so let's see if I can move this and share my screen for those of us who were able to show up and join the live stream. Let's see if we can share this. So another thing I wanted to talk about today was you are working on a book. In fact, you are close to being done. Spring AI in Action. Can you talk about this? Can you like what? Yeah, I know you've written a lot of books, and I've in the middle of finishing, or not in the middle, I'm at the end of finishing my first one. And I didn't realize like how hard it was. And our good friend Nate said, it's kind of like having kids. You don't realize what you're getting yourself into. And then you're in the middle of it and you swear you'll never do it again. And then you do it again.
Right.
So what, do you have a similar process? Have you gone through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sickness, really. You don't ever want to write a book because once you do, you're going to feel compelled to write another one. And it's a beating. It's like just asking. It's signing up to be abused is what it amounts to. And it's abuse from the publisher. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're great people, but it's just
for sure.
They try to keep you on track, and in doing so, it feels like just a beating, and you yourself kind of beat yourself up. And then the book gets out there, and then the readers, most of them are nice. Occasionally you get the jerk who wants to call out the one typo you made, and then declares that you didn't do all the work you should have done, and you just tried to rush the print. And some people are jerks. But yeah, this is, I started writing this a while back, a little over a year ago, and it was challenging, and I knew it would be challenging for some of the most obvious reasons, in that Spring AI was not even 1.0 yet, not even close.
Right. And AI was just changing so much at the time, right?
Right. And so I'm writing about something that's, I could wake up the next morning and everything I wrote was completely wrong. Spring AI was not 1.0 yet. So I'm writing about something that's not even technically 100% real yet. And I knew these were going to be challenges. The publisher knew these were going to be challenges. They were very patient with me in that regard. And things are just constantly evolving. But my goal was to get it, kind of write about it as it was happening, even if that meant I had to go back and update things, so I could still fail, but try to get it published shortly after Spring AI goes 1.0. Well, Spring AI is 1.0 now. It's not published yet, but most of it is available in early access. I actually finished the writing phase of it about a month ago, just a little less than a month ago. And then with some discussions with the publisher, we decided to add another chapter. So I'm, again, not done. So I'm working on one additional chapter now.
Is there a way can I see? Oh yeah, the chapters. So getting started with Spring AI, evaluating generated responses. Ooh, I actually have to. So you're saying this is in early release? I can go like basically purchase the book now and like read it. Cool. I'm gonna have to do that because I would love to do that.
Yeah, there's some updates I've made since the last MEP was dropped.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through a pass about a month ago. About the time I finished the last chapter, I went through another pass, went through every single chapter, and if I saw a need to make an update, I did. So it's
gotcha.
It's not 100% current, but it's pretty close.
So without reading the chapter yet, and we don't need to go too far into this, I want to start evaluating generated responses. This is a big challenge, and I did a section on this in my course, like, hey, how can you write tests? And so really when it comes to like writing tests for your code, for me, you have two types of tests, right? You have deterministic workflows, which are like, I can give you a bunch of examples and do some sentiment analysis on it and say like, now I can hand you a YouTube comment or review, and somehow we should be able to tell if this is like positive, negative, or neutral, right? So we can write like traditional unit tests for that. But on the non-deterministic side, when I give you a prompt, I have no, it could be 5 different prompts in 5 different, calls to the LM. How do you think about evaluating these generated responses?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to testing, I sort of take the same approach as you just described. I have two kinds of tests. I use WireMock to mock out my whatever API, like OpenAI or whatever. I mock those responses out so I get a very fixed response. I pretend that I'm, using WireMock, pretend that I'm actually working with OpenAI, but I'm going to always get back the same answer no matter what prompt I send to it. That way I can test that the code around sending the prompt actually is doing what it's supposed to do. But then you get to the point where, okay, I've got a prompt, I'm sending it in. It has maybe some placeholders that the user has filled in along the way. And so now I'm sending this prompt and I'm getting back a very non-deterministic response. Now, some people will say, well, the way you fix that is you adjust the temperature so you always get the same response back, which is, that's great, except that's not what you're going to do in a real application, most likely.
Right.
So, so you get a non-deterministic response back. So then the question is, you can't do it. There's not a is equal. So what you do is you say, okay, given the response I got back, given the prompt that was sent, does this make sense? So you ask it, you basically turn around and you ask the LLM, given this question, given this answer, does the answer make sense? Does it fit? And, kind of a good practice is to ask a different LLM than the one that gave you the answer.
I was just going to say that. It's almost like that Spider-Man meme pointing at each other. Like if you ask it, like, is this a good response? Like, yeah, sure.
Right. And another way of doing it is similar to that, but instead of simply saying, here's the answer question, here's the answer, is this a reasonable answer to this question, is to say, okay, here's the question, here is a known to be good answer. Is this answer match up? Does that align with that? And it gives a little bit stronger response.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I did was like I pat in some of my tests, like I added some context, like in the, if you did a RAG example, you pull some context from a database to provide as part of the user request in the prompt. And you say, hey, based on this context, does it sound like the answer that we're getting back is kind of close, right? There's a relevant evaluator, there's a fact checking evaluator. So Spring AI gives you a couple of a really good framework for doing this, and you can always extend that or implement that evaluator interface to kind of create your own. But there's a couple out of the box that work really well.
Right. It's great that there's a couple out of the box. I mean, fact checking evaluator, I had written one. In fact, the original drop of this chapter, it included one that I had written myself because fact checking evaluator didn't exist. And so since then I've dropped mine and started using that one. But yeah, if you go look at other, dare I mention that there are other frameworks out there for working with AI.
There is.
If you go look at like LangChain, and I'm not talking LangChain for J, I'm talking the Python one. If you're looking at those, they have a fairly rich set of evaluators, and there is no reason any of those. Some of them I think are valuable. Some of them I quite honestly don't understand. But I think it'd be great if there were Spring AI implementations of those, which is, Spring AI had a lot to do with 4.1.0, so those didn't make it. For sure.
And like, it's been interesting to see, like, talk to Mark and Christian about kind of the next steps, because the whole team was just really trying to get to that 1.0 release. And so they had to make some calls, like what should we kind of put on the back burner until we get past 1.0. So yeah, there's never going to be a shortage of features to work on. Cool. So we can get this in early access now. You said probably early, like sometime this fall, this will go to print.
That's what I anticipate. I mean, I still got that one chapter to write, so I got to catch up with that. But then there's the production process, which I really have almost nothing to do with. Other than I come back and I review what they do and say, yeah, that looks good. And that usually takes a lot longer than I think it probably should. But I don't know what they're doing, so it's a black box to me for the most part. Whenever I finish that last chapter, basically a month and a half, 2 months, and then it'll drop.
Cool. Well, that'll be that'll be awesome. Everybody can get it before Christmas as a stocking stuffer. Well, how many pages are we at? I didn't even see. Probably won't fit in a stocking, huh?
It's I don't know. I know that there's how many pages it says on the website, but then I don't know if that's accurate. So
Right. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna when I get a chance. I'm actually going on vacation, so I might like pull the early access down and sit on the beach with some Spring AI. So, have you thought about what your next book might be? Since you said you're
no, I thought
for
not
punishment.
writing for. I think I'm probably going to have to update Spring in Action because Spring in Action 6 is a bit behind. It's a little old now. I had started working on Spring in Action 7. I had started doing that. It was probably about halfway finished when the publisher and I had a discussion and decided, okay, let's set that aside and do this AI thing. So they're going to probably want me to come back to that as well. And I'm kind of glad I did set it aside because there's some really cool stuff I could write about now that didn't exist then. So
will you be able to focus on like Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4 if you get to that?
It'll be whatever's newest is what I'll focus on. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that actually worked out really well then. Cool. Again, if you have some questions, please get them in and we'll see if we can't answer them. Let me see. I do have a couple. Let me remove this so we can see if we can answer these. When writing tests towards the real LLM, I think you either test the integration and any response not being an error would qualify as a pass. That's not entirely true. So some of the examples that I went through, Craig, was like what is the what is the capital of Ohio? It's Columbus, right? But what if it said Cleveland? Like that's a response, but that's not the right response, right? And it's again depends on what type of question you're trying to ask. If it's on pre-trained data that we think it knows the answer to, then yes, we should probably have a factual answer come back. But if it's on like Spring AI 1.0, it's not trained on that. So if you ask it a question about something to do with that, it may not be factually correct. You may get an answer, but it may not be factually correct. So you could write some tests to include like that context, right?
Yeah, like a fact-checking evaluator would help when you have something like with Spring AI, if you were asking questions about it. You could provide some facts. And then if the question is asked about those facts, you can evaluate whether it's true or not. But if you're trying to, and this is kind of nothing you would write in production unless you have a very fun job. But if you were to ask it to tell you a joke about elephants, it's going to give you a joke, but there's no facts you can check. You just have to evaluate, does this look like a joke? And is it about elephants? And if it is, then that's good. It doesn't mean it has to be a good joke.
Right. Yeah, I mean, along those same lines. What do you think about the future of Spring AI? Do you think it will grow into agent framework land?
I'm going to interpret that a specific way. Do you think it will do you think it'll support creating agents? And to some degree, it already does. Depends on your definition of agent, which is kind of the problem, is everybody has a different one. But to some degree, it already kind of does when you consider that the way I like to define agents, which fits with a lot of the frameworks out there, is an agent is just something that does something, and it probably uses an LLM to get it done. And then it's the integration and the flow around all that makes it magic. But yes, I think it will, and in fact, I'm pretty sure it will support agents. Now, to what degree, I can't say because I'm not part of the Spring AI team proper. But I can say things like, looking at Google's Agent SDK, that's a really nice thing they have, and it's basically patterns. It's just flow patterns. It's basically you define, here's an agent that generates some answer, but now we're going to put some flow around it. We're either going to chain those things together, or we're going to put them in a loop, or whatever. There's several different things about that, and the world is kind of, some people have different approaches to this. Even there's there's debates and very heated debates about the word agentic versus agent and whether those are even mean the same thing. And I don't care. Really, I don't.
Yeah.
What I am going to say is this. I like to break it into two categories. There's agent or agentic workflows, which are fairly basic. The developer gets to decide what the flow looks like, but then the LLM sort of does its job within this flow. And then there's the planning part of agents. And that's a little bit more magical to some degree. And it's where the developer is not in control necessarily of exactly the steps that take place. Something within the framework makes those decisions.
Right.
And that's where something like Rod Johnson's Babel comes in, and that it does the planning. Now, in the case of Babel, it's not necessarily, in fact, in the current implementation, it's not using an LLM. It's using something completely different to do the planning. But the idea is still the same, is you don't really know, or the developer is not writing out an algorithm or a set of steps that's going to produce that. But Babel is based on Spring AI. So yes, Spring AI can do that because Babel does that.
Great answer. Plug and play. Any plans to make more efficient and fast Spring Data JPA as compared to Spring Data JDBC in terms of data intensive 100 millions of data in a day? There's a lot to unpack there. So I don't think I'm going to be able to answer that. But at the end of the day, there are always optimizations you can make, and there are always ways to get things to move faster. So if you have like a particular thing that you're trying to do, please reach out to us, or reach out to me and Deshaun, and we'll see if we can help you out there. Cool. So I said we were going to do some show and tell today. I wanted to just me and you love kind of geeking out over this stuff. I wanted to just talk about some of the things that we're using. We were talking about before the show. There's just too many things to keep up on. I can't keep up on all these things. So I like hearing what you're interested in, what you're working with these days. And I figure I'd show off a couple of things that I'm doing. So I think one place to start, though, is, let me see if I can share my screen again. I'll do my best to kind of tell everyone at home what we're doing here. Is this. Let's share. Okay, so I think this is one thing that I want to try and I'm always confused on too, and so I figured we'd see if we can figure this out together. So I want to talk about the different kind of categories of things that we're in these days as developers, and we want to use these tools to help us be more productive. What are the different categories so we can kind of separate when to reach for one or the other? So I think we all started with kind of these standalone chatbot assistants, whether it's ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Anthropic Claude. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Craig. In this category, when are you reaching for one of these as a developer? What are you using these tools for?
That's a good question. I really don't use these tools.
Right.
I use them, but not necessarily for coding.
For coding, right.
And
that makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, I have. Don't get me wrong. I have used them. I have asked it to write code for me just to see how well it would do. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's amusing. But I honestly I don't use them for that a lot. I use them more like ChatGPT. I use quite a bit for just idea generation. I know what I want to say, but I'm not sure how to say it. Or if I'm just sometimes it helps me get past writer's block. I'm like, okay, here's what I'm writing about. Here's what I'm going to say next, but what should I say? And I don't let it write it for me either. I don't even copy and paste what it gives me. It's just more like to unblock my brain than anything.
Yep. And I think, I'm kind of in the same boat. Sometimes I'll ask it to write some code, but mostly I don't. But before some of these other categories came into play, I would use these a lot, right? But these are so disconnected from your development workflows. So you'd have to go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I need to write this method or this class. And then you have to copy it over to your IDE. And it has no context of all of the things going on in your application or your systems, right? So with that, we kind of move to another kind of category, if you will. And for me, that was like these inline ID assistants. So things like GitHub Copilot, JetBrains AI, Amazon Code Whisperer, these kind of integrate into your ID and give you suggestions, right? And I know you're a big fan of Copilot. You said you still use this a lot today. What are you
Yeah.
using this for?
I mean, it's like fancy code completion. I mean, IDs have had some form of code completion for a while, but this is like a more intense version of it. And I use it mostly, and when it works great. And when it doesn't work, it sucks big time. But I use it a lot of times. I'll start writing code and it'll suggest what I should be. It'll suggest what it thinks I'm going to be doing. And sometimes it's right. And if it is right, I'll go ahead and let it do that. It's not that I didn't know how to do what I was going to do. It's just like, if you know what I'm going to do, then save me some typing. I don't want to have to type all that. It helps me to move faster. I know that there are ways, and I've done that. I admit I've done this a few times. You put like a comment in there that says, okay, I want to solve this kind of problem, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
How would I do that? And it dumps out some code. And more often than not, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, that's not what I really meant.
Right.
And so I don't really use it that way that much at all. But yeah, I'll start typing, and it's like, again, it's the same as code completion. It makes a suggestion that maybe sometimes it's eerie how it's almost like, letter for letter exactly what I would have typed.
Right.
I just type it now.
Right. So this kind of puts you in more control, right? You're still being the developer in control. You're kind of putting all the pieces together. It's just automating and kind of making you more productive in like the mundane task of typing that thing out.
Right. And if anybody's ever seen me present at a conference, and I do a lot of live coding, I don't turn off Copilot when I do that. And people who've seen me will attest to the fact that I'm like, I'll start typing. I'm like, yeah, that's not what we want to do. Ignore Copilot. It's drunk.
Yeah. I know. I almost should have turned it off for my course because I found the same thing. I'm like, oh no, I don't. That's not what I want to do. And it shows you like, it's okay when it shows you like one line, but when it shows you like, here's what I think the next 10 lines are going to be, I'm like, oh boy, no, don't do that. But yeah, that's great. So we moved into this kind of category and we weren't done yet. We were like, okay, that's pretty cool, but we can maybe take it a step further. And so along have come these kind of tools that I would say are agentic AI ID environments. I guess that's what I'm calling it. Tools like Cursor and Windsurf and JetBrains Junie. And this kind of, there's a whole bunch of things going on inside of these categories, right? You can start to plan out entire applications. So you can say, hey, write me this Spring Boot application that does this. And you can also do like interactive mode and like approve certain changes and revert certain changes. But this is like really kind of taking that Copilot step to the next level, right? Instead of like writing out the method and getting an inline suggestion, you're saying, write me out this entire like package or feature of something, right? Have you had a chance to kind of dive into any of these?
I really should spend more time with them, honestly, but because I hear so many good things about them. I have spent, it was a while back, but I spent some time with Windsurf one day when I first heard about it. And I asked it to create me a Spring Boot application with a REST API. And I can't remember exactly what I asked it to do. And it basically emitted a full-blown Spring application. And and it used, I think it used Spring Data JPA as the persistence. And I decided, okay, well, let's just have some fun with this. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to use Spring Data JPA. I want to use Spring Data JDBC. It said, okay. And it made some changes. And then I said, okay, yeah, I really don't want to use Java Beans. I want records for my entities. And it said, okay. And it did that. And I was impressed with how it did it. But at the end of it all, I was looking at the code and it's like I walked into somebody else's project, which, it's an important thing to be able to do. But that was my project and I didn't recognize it. And so I just didn't like the feeling. I mean, you can call me a Luddite if you want, but I still like writing code. I don't want, I don't like having
I completely agree.
Write the code for me.
I think, and there are some things somebody was saying this on, I think it was on LinkedIn, and I was watching kind of a thread go about this, and somebody said, yeah, like I asked one of these tools to create a new Spring Boot project from scratch with certain features, and it struggled because there are so many different examples on the internet. And my thought process on this, and I'm curious on yours, is like, if I'm treating this again as like I've just gained access to a junior developer to help me on a project, or even a senior developer, right? Like, I am going to ask this person, this Agentic ID, to kind of help me build this project. And so for that, I wouldn't ask them to generate a Spring Boot project from scratch. I'm going to start.spring.io. I'm creating the project with all of the requirements that I need, and I'm starting with that. Then we can start to have a conversation about features that I can implement. So for me, step number one is like, don't automate away the things that you don't need to automate. Like the Spring Initialize is a really good place to like kickstart a new application. So do that, and then start with that and start to automate some things. And then for a lot of these different tools out there, like Cursor and Windsurf and Junie, I wish everybody would just standardize on something. Every tool has like a different markdown file. Like Junie's is junie.md, Cursor or Windsurf's is windsurf.md, Cursor is agents.md. I wish we could just kind of standardize on some of these, but there's a way to include a file that basically says like, hey, when I write code, I prefer records over classes for immutability. If we're going to use a database, I prefer Spring Data JDBC over JPA. So you can build out these kind of like, these are my preferences for coding. Anytime we use a project, you could do it per project or hey, every project should follow these kind of guidelines. And I know that sounds like some work up front, and it is, to kind of iterate on that process. But once you get that dialed in, man, every single project that you kind of do after that, it's like, I'm not doing that iterating that you just said. Like, I don't have to tell it about records. I don't have to tell it about Spring Data JDBC, right? So there are ways to kind of dial these in to get these pretty cool. So the next kind of step, I don't have some graphics for these, so I'm going to have to write these out. But the next, I want to figure this out because I don't know if there's a name for this category yet. And it's these terminal-based kind of agentic editors, I guess. These are things like Claude Code. OpenAI has Codex. And then Gemini just last week released Gemini CLI. And that was interesting. So these two are actually OpenAI Codex and Gemini CLI are actually open source. So that's interesting. You can do some things with that. And I've seen Gemini CLI get a whole bunch of pull requests on there. So that's been pretty active. And Claude Code I've been using a lot more lately. And I'm going to show a specific thing off of that for my kind of show and tell piece today that I think is really interesting. But can we come up with a name for this, Craig? What do we think about this?
I don't know.
So Agentic
AI CLI tools. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build off of what you used on the previous.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea. Agentic AI CLI. Is it an environment or is it a tool? I would say it's a tool, right?
Yeah.
So now there's this kind of new category, and who knows where this is going to go off to next. We keep seeming to like take the abstraction level up a bit. But if you aren't familiar with this, these are command line tools. So you open up a terminal and you run like Claude Code. What I really like about this is you do this on a per project basis, and then you're just kind of having a conversation. And I guess there are pros and cons to both. One of the things I kind of don't like about like all of the IDE environments is it's making changes, and you kind of have to go, yeah, I approve that one, or I approve that one, and then no, don't do that. And you can approve them all at once, but there's so much going on in an IDE. That little sidebar is like, for me, not enough room to like really kind of figure out what's going on, even on a large monitor. And I don't know. I just feel like, although I'm never writing code in a terminal, I'm comfortable in a terminal, right? So Yeah, I think I'm just going to show this off real quick. So one of the things you can do with Claude Code, I can come in here. I'm in a new Spring Boot project. I can just go ahead and type out Claude, and it says, hey, Claude Code may read files in this folder. Reading untrusted files may lead to behave in unexpected ways. You are basically giving it permission to do things in the folder that you're in, which is good. So it's kind of sandbox. It's not able to like go off on your whole machine and do some things. Once you get in there, the biggest thing for me is early on when we had things like Copilot, one of the things I couldn't do was I wanted to be able to like tell it about my project, because I want to say like, hey, we write, we have widget A over here. Here's how we write tests for widget A. I want to create a new widget B, and I want to write some tests for those. But I want it to like stay consistent with things that are going on in my project, right? So that's why I like that you kind of have the context of the application. This is not a tutorial on Claude Code, but there are a whole bunch of things you can do. One of the things you can do is you can go into something called plan mode. And I think you could do this in like the IDE environments too, where you're kind of just asking. You're not asking it to like write code right now. You're just like saying, hey, if we were going to like build this feature out, how would you do it? And again, this is that conversation I'm having with the junior developer right now, instead of just saying, go write this, come back later and do it, So if I wanted to, oh, am I not? Oh,
yeah, I haven't seen anything
no.
happen. I didn't know if you intended that or not.
Let's fix that. I definitely was.
You are sharing your screen, but you're not sharing. I don't see what you're doing with Claude Code. I'll let you
Right.
browse it.
So let's do this. Stop screen. Yeah, it might be way more interesting if we could see it. So share screen. Well, maybe not to the podcast listeners at home. So
true.
So let's do this. Let's share that. Okay, that's better. Okay, so in a terminal, I'm able to go into plan mode, and I can just have a conversation about what I want to try to build out here. So I would like to build out, this is an example that I get. I would like to build out a REST API that talks to the JSON placeholder service / posts endpoint, right? And from there, this information won't change often. So maybe we can introduce some caching via Spring's built-in caching mechanism, right? Something like that. So I'm not quite sure how to build what I'm building, but I just want to start a conversation in plan mode. And so what I like about this is it will come back, and now it has the context of your application. It will go off and see like, what do you have so far? So if I had some existing things already in place, I can use those. In this case, this is a brand new application. It says perfect. I can see this is a clean Spring Boot 3.5.3 project with Spring AI integration, and it can go through there. And then what it comes up with is a plan. So I want to build a REST API endpoint that communicates with JSON placeholders posts. Here are the steps that we can take. So I want to add the required dependencies. Here's a good one right off the bat. Part of that plan is it wants to add Spring Boot Starter Webflux because it thinks it wants to use the web client to reach out to the service. And so right away, I can go in here and I can say like, first off, it says, do you want to proceed? I say, no, we're going to keep planning. We don't need this. We can use Spring Boot's Spring Boot 3.2 REST client, right? So now it'll use that information. And again, if this has the same thing that I talked about with some of those IDE, AI IDE environments, you can have, if you do an init in here with the terminal, it'll write a Claude.md. And again, those are kind of your like preferences and things like that. But right away, so it doesn't need that Webflux anymore because we had that conversation about it. So this is really just me having a conversation about what I want to build first before I have it build it. And I don't know if this is right because I'm not going to sit here and figure this out right now. But if I determined that after a back and forth that this was right, I can go off and have it start writing things. This is one way of doing it. Another way that I've kind of done this lately is I will, if you can integrate some MCP tools. So if you integrate like something like GitHub, now you could say like, great, now don't do this all at once. Go create a bunch of issues for this. So each of those things that it planned out, it would go create an issue for it. And now you have issues for it. And now you can come back and go, okay, let's tackle issue 1, 2, 3. And then you can plan that out a little bit more and then have it fix that, because then it can, one of the things you don't want to do with any of these tools is have large commits, right? You want to do these in smaller chunks so you can branch off of that. So if things go wrong, you can easily kind of revert that. So I've been having a lot of fun with this kind of workflow.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I've not had a chance to use Collab Code yet. I mean, again, there's too many things to take my time, but right. I hear good things about it. And this is actually the first time I've seen it. And I like the idea of it. I mean, whether or not I use it to actually do the work for me, that's a separate matter. Because like I said, I still like coding. I do like that it puts together a plan for me. Because even though I'm pretty good at putting together plans myself, I usually do it in my head and I forget a step or something. So having it jot down a plan for me is pretty good.
Yeah, like and then you can, there's these things called slash commands. It's basically like what I'm going to like perform an action. You can write your own slash commands too. And then like you can create another like tool to like say like, hey, you're a senior Java developer who's really like an expert at reviewing code. And so after you plan and write it, then you can have it review it too. So like go back and review your work on issue 1, 2, 3 and see if there's any issues. And if there's not, then we can go ahead and submit a PR and get that ready to merge. So yeah, just been having a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So that is my show and tell for today. Do you have anything you'd like to show off?
Sure. I'm going to do a little less live coding. Let me pull the window over though. Let me find it. There's actually 2 things I could show.
Cool.
Let me figure out. I got too many windows open right now. There we go. There's the one I wanted. Let me pull that over and share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Share screen. There's a lot of buttons to click on this thing to make it work. All right, so I'm going to move that out of the way so that you don't see Inception on the screen.
There we go. I think you're ready. I'm going to add you.
All right. So this is already pre-coded, but I've been tinkering around a lot with Mbabel, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the Mbabel's pretty cool. It comes from Rod Johnson, the same guy who created Spring in the first place. He's created this, and it's really interesting. It's a way of creating agents, and the way you create an agent is you ignore the details of what you see in here as far as the domain. Don't worry about that just yet. But you annotate it with agent, and Rod likes to say, and I kind of see where he's going with this. Think of this as if you were writing a controller. You're creating a REST controller or just a regular controller, and you're saying, okay, I'm a controller. And that's essentially what this is it's saying I'm an agent. But then within that controller, you have different actions you're going to take based on the type of request you get. So it's going to be a GET request or a POST request, or it's going to be a POST request that has a certain content type or whatever. So you have different POST mappings and GET mappings and whatnot. Well, here what we have is actions. These are the actions that we're going to take. And so this action doesn't have any specific description otherwise, but what it's going to do is look up some information. Down here, we have an action that achieves a goal. So in this case, the goal it's trying to achieve is to pick a game. And so there's a lot of other details in here, like there's a persona of the agent. So the agent's name is Rose McDice, and expert at board games, whatever. And so this first action, what it does is it just basically takes the user input, and based on what the user says, tries to extract some preferences from the user, like how many players are you interested in playing, or what's the complexity of the game? Is there a theme that you want to play with? And it tries to extract that from what the user said. And it uses an LLM to do that. So this is the prompt that sends it to try to extract that out. But then down here, we have another action that is trying to pick a game based on what the user said. And notice this is where the kind of the strong typing, a lot of AI frameworks, they like to bind the response to an object on the way out, but they don't really deal with that on the way in.
Right.
But here we have game preferences. So this action needs a game preferences to do its work. And we get one of those from up here in this action. And so I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here. I have several games in here. I've got 8 games I put in here just for grins, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And right now, these are hard-coded in the prompt. And if I were to have time to flesh this out further, I'd probably pull them from somewhere, from a database or whatever. But I just hard-coded them in here now just to make it easy. And when you run this, I've got, just kind of jump over here, game preferences, in case you're wondering, is just a simple record with number of players, complexity, and theme. The game itself has a title, minimum, maximum players, difficulty, and a description. And then over here in my properties, I've done a couple of things. First off, I've got the shell profile active. By having the shell profile active, I'll have a shell that I can interact with. But I've also turned off, basically only set the root level of logging to fatal, because if you don't do that, what happens is you have a shell running that's going to standard out. You also have logs going to standard out. And it's just a mess.
Too much.
Just really noisy. Yeah. So I just said, only tell me if something's fatal.
Is this using Spring Shell underneath the hood?
Yes, I believe it is. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So if you don't have the shell active, then what happens is there's a couple of ways that you would interact with your agent. One of the ways that I noticed last week, it's the first time I actually turned off the shell, and because I got to wondering, wait, this is not how I'm going to do this in a production app. I'm not going to have a shell that I'm going to interact with. So how does my application or another application interact with the shell? So I turned off the shell profile, and when I did that, I noticed that it exposes all of the actions in my agent as tools in an MCP server. And I thought that was cool. And because I'm also spending a lot of time with MCP in the last several months. And there's also, I was chatting with Rod about it. There's other ways you can interact with it as well. I mean, they embrace agent to agent. There's other ways. But for today, for this show and tell, I'm going to go with just the shell, just because it's easiest to demo.
And so you're basically building a local agent that just you can use right now.
Right.
Which is fine.
And so,
a lot of these tools start out that way, right? Like I'm trying to solve my own problem. How do I do it? I could patch together all these things, or I can use a framework to say, here's a workflow of things I'm trying to do, right?
Right. So here's the shell, and the shell basically has a lot of stuff going on in it. So I could ask it to list all my agents, and it's going to show, I have several other agents other than the one I showed, but it's going to list of agents. If I can see what my actions are. And you can see they've got different actions here that are coming from a variety of different agents. There's other commands too we could look at, but the one that lets you really interact with the agent is chat. So once you enter chat, now I'm actually chatting with something, and I can ask it, I can say something like, I'm having 4 friends over to play games. What game would you recommend? And oops. And it's going to go off and it's going to realize that it needs to achieve a game has been chosen goal, which is the goal that was on that action. Is that the one you want to do? So yes, I approve it. And so it's going to go off and do things. I have some sys outs in there too, or more sys errors in there to say what the user said. Once it shows, here's the preferences it went with. So the number of players is 5. We don't care about complexity or theme. And then it went off and it picked 7 Wonders as a game.
Cool.
And so, I mean, and it gives you some other details like which LLM it used to do that, because you could have multiple LLMs and you could have it pick the best LLM for the job or whatever. I'm not really doing that right now. I think I have it hard coded as 4.1 in there.
Nice.
Based on the fact that I was using that model, here's the cost that it cost me. So it cost me,
that's always good to know. Yeah.
Less than a fraction of a cent. But I could also, because I have other agents in there, I could say, I really like Indian food. What should I eat? Because I have another agent in there that's very similar to the game chooser, but it picks a meal based on some
Well,
choices that it offers.
I would go with some chicken curry and some garlic naan. That sounds really good.
Well, that sounds great, except that's not on my list. So actually, I only had 3 different dishes in there, and they're all different. So
Yeah,
one's Indian, one's like some sort of pasta. I forget what the other one is.
nice.
Because I asked for Indian food, I expected to pick.
Oh, tikka masala.
Yeah.
That's what my wife
And
loves. So.
And so here I have multiple agents in there, but it chose the right agent based on that. And there's also some planning. You may have, let's go back to the game chooser agent to kind of talk about, there's just a little bit of planning in here, but obviously it needed to do this to pick a game, because that's the game that has been chosen is the goal. But to get there, we needed game preferences. And so for that, it knew it needed to call this to take the user input and extract out the game preferences.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of planning in there. It's a very simple example, so there's not a great deal of planning. But one of the that's kind of unique about Mbabel is that while you could use an LLM to help put together a plan of what it's going to do, Mbabel doesn't do that. It uses something called goal-oriented action planning, or GOAP, which is a type of AI planning. It's commonly used in, or it's best known probably for the non-playable characters in video games and kind of driving those things. But it basically, it doesn't use an LLM, therefore it doesn't, there's two benefits of that. Number one, it doesn't cost you as far as, hitting an LLM, having to pay for those tokens.
Yeah.
But number two, it's also deterministic, where an LLM is not. So you could run this multiple times and get the same plan every single time for the same prompt.
Right. So, which helps with testing, as we said before. So.
Right. And like I said, I've barely scratched the surface of what Mbabel can do. So I'm just relatively new to me.
Do you know, so we talked about, like, again, some people define agents 10 different ways, right? If there's kind of an agentic workflow where it's like, hey, these are the 5 predetermined steps I want you to take. And you do these in order, and when you're done, you're done. And then there's other, like, autonomous agents that, hey, here's a goal, take whatever actions you need or see fit to kind of carry out that goal, right? It sounds like it's the latter one. Can you do both of those in Mbabel, or is it more like, I'm going to hand you a task, and however you want to finish it, finish it?
I think it's more of the latter one, and the big difference being with some of the other approaches to this is because GOAP is deterministic. You're always going to get the same plan, but the developer is not in charge of the plan.
Right.
It's determined by the framework.
Yeah, because if I wanted to do a workflow, I can use, especially with MCP servers, I can write like an MCP client in Spring and say, here are the tools you have available to you. Here's the exact order I want you to run them in. So I'm just always thinking, like, these things I'm trying to build out, which tools can I use to build them? So
yeah, I've seen somebody, I can't remember where I saw this or who said this, but they sort of described agents with sort of a maturity model. And it started off with something just simple. You're sending a prompt, you're getting an answer back. And then it graduated up to something between there that I don't remember now. And then the next one was agentic workflows, where the developer defines the workflow, but there's still LLM under the covers doing the thinking. And then there's planning.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, we're running out of time here, but I figured one other thing I wanted to talk about. You've got a whole book coming out. I got a course out on Spring AI, and we tinker with this stuff all the time. We get to hang out and do an 8-hour workshop in Colorado Springs later this year at Dev Connect. That's going to be a lot of fun. But I've also never given an 8-hour workshop, so it's a little scary too. But I think between us, we got enough content.
I've done it a few times. It is, in fact, I'm doing one between now and then. I'm doing an 8-hour workshop before you and I meet.
All right.
But it's scary. But what's great is there's these things called breaks.
Yes,
and you get to
lots
go
of them.
You get to go hide for 15, 30 minutes and kind of decompress and then come back.
Yep. So what's your approach on a workshop? Do you like to say, like, hey, I'm giving 2 4-hour workshops, or I'm giving 4 2-hour workshops, or 8 1-hour talks? Like, or do you just kind of say, I have 8 hours. How do I break this up?
That's how I do it. I have 8 hours,
Yeah.
and I basically, I mean, to some degree, I do break it into. So it's 8 hours. I'm thinking of the no fluff, just stuff structure for workshops. So it'd be for an 8 hour workshop, it would be 4 1.5 hour with breaks, 4 1.5 hour slots. And
All
so I
right.
take each 1.5 hours. I'm like, okay, here's the overall progression of what I want to do.
Yep.
For this first 1.5 hours, what do we need to get done? For the next one, what do we need to get done? And then I recognize up front that no matter what kind of planning I do, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so, we may take longer, or everybody shows up, they're fully prepared, they rock, they're kicking butt. That never happens, but it could happen.
Yeah.
And then we finish early. We're finished in like 6 hours. So
Right. Yeah. And I think you probably always have more content. I mean, no matter what I do, I always have more in case we get through something fast. But it rarely works out that way. I helped Mark out with a workshop at Spring IO, and in 1 hour, I got through just the basics and writing your first like call to an LLM. So like that, there is so much more than that, right? So that took an hour. So yeah, so you never know. Real quick, I got a question here. I want to get to it. Hi, Dan and Craig. For someone new to this, can you suggest an order or strength to try out different tools? I'm aware of Claude, Amazon Q, Copilot, and now Google's offering, but have not used much. I'll let you answer that.
I'm not sure I know. Again,
okay.
because most of the context here is about things that I just don't use that often, other than Copilot. So.
Right. Yeah, and I guess it would be, it kind of matters. The answer we always like to give, right? It depends. It depends, like what context you're working in. Are you a solo developer? Are you part of a team? Because in a team format, a lot of those kind of decisions have already been made. Like these are the tools you have access to. If you're just kind of using this for yourself, you can kind of pick the tools that you have access to. I would say there is a progression to this. I don't know that I would go jump into a full-blown agentic IDE that can just write apps for you, right? Especially, we have this term called vibe coding, which like people write entire apps and then push to production. That I understand that that's not you, Daniel, but there is that going on out there as well. I would say, you got to find what works for you. I would start off with something like Copilot. Like Craig said, you're still in control of everything. You just get inline suggestions. You get to be a little bit more productive, but you're still doing all the things. Then maybe the next step is, hey, let me look at one of these IDEs that can do this, or look at one of these terminal-based agentic workflows that can do this. With any of these things, I would say, one of the things I did not invent this saying. I heard this from someone, but you are the pilot, not the passenger. So you are the pilot of this ship or of this airplane. So make sure that no matter what assistance you are getting, whether it's inline or full-blown features or full-blown applications, don't let it write everything and just be done with it. Like you have to stay in control of this and review all of these things. And I think this is where processes, especially in enterprise organizations, are more important than ever. We have code reviews in place. We have CI/CD pipelines that run tests and make sure these automated tests are all working before we go ship new features, right? So I would say you got to try them. Start at the Copilot level, go to like an IDE, go to a terminal, but you have to try them. And as Craig said, we are in this every day, and there's still too many tools for us to try. So good luck.
Sleep is overrated.
What?
Sleep is overrated.
It is. All right. Well, yeah. I'm interested. I'm really looking forward to Dev to Next. We have a lot of things going on there, but an 8-hour workshop on Spring AI, that's going to be a lot of fun. We should probably start working on that pretty soon, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe in a last responsible moment the day before, but yeah.
I wonder if we could just go in and say, here's Craig's book. Can you just start reading this?
Yes. We'll see
We'll
you
do like
later.
a reading. Craig will sit up front and read the book to you.
Yes, that'll be
All right.
fascinating.
All right. Cool. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for coming on today and geeking out with me. I love talking about this stuff. And you were the first person I thought of. So a lot of fun to do that. If people want to, if you want to be found on the internet, not everybody does. But if people wanted to get a hold of you or find you, where can they learn more about you?
If you go to habuma.com, habuma.com, that will find me everywhere I'm at, including all my social media links and everything.
That's great. Perfect. I will get that in the show notes as well. Craig, thanks again for taking some time out of your day. Had a lot of fun chatting with you. And thanks to everyone for showing up. We will see you next week. Have a good one.
Later.